When I moved to Chico in 1982, all the way from Paradise, California, little did I know what an amazing experience was waiting for me. There was so much to look at. And within that first year, a new partner supported my desire to further my education beyond high school. I began to devour everything art-related, and this included the art that adorned storefronts and the sides of buildings in what has become my hometown. I don't know how many of you are familiar with downtown or even going into downtown, but there's art everywhere, even the little things that hold newspapers, or used to hold them. One of the first things I saw that stopped me in my tracks was the huge mural on the side of Taylor Hall on the Chico State campus. This is right here. It was massive. Academy, created by Chico State alum John Pugh. In 1981, while still a student, he obtained his first major mural commission from the university, and he was paid $20. It covered the northeast corner of Taylor Hall from 1981 until 2014, when the building was torn down to make room for the new Arts and Humanity building. It was reconstructed by Pugh and his team and reinstalled. Mr. Pugh is now internationally known, and his studio is in Truckee, California. I don't get downtown as much as I used to. I did work downtown for about 6 years. But when I do, I make sure to swing by the corner of Salem and First Streets and thank Mr. Pugh for one of Chico's legendary landmarks.
As Susan mentioned, there are a lot of pieces of art in Chico. There is a piece of public art in downtown Chico that I think many people walk by without noticing. And if you look at this photograph, you can see why. It's not that remarkable in appearance from a distance. You could walk right under it, not necessarily notice it. Like Academy, it is also on the rebuilt Arts and Humanities building facing the B-Line bus terminal. The title of the piece is Face Wall. And a closer photograph, Malachi, go to the next slide, please, will show you that it is made up of the profiles of 996 people affiliated with Chico State and people from the Chico community. And here is an online description of the art piece. Face Wall is a 42-foot wide stainless steel sculpture integrated into the 2nd Street facade of the Arts and Humanities building on the Chico State campus. Made up of nearly 1,000 faces in silhouette of students, faculty, staff, and community members, the artwork is comprised of 79 vertical stainless steel planes. Each 11-foot tall plane or totem includes 12 to 14 unique profiles. The idea of inclusivity is the key to the creation of the artwork. Face Wall reflects the vibrant community that makes up Chico. These individuals stand like totems on the facade of the Arts and Humanities building, quietly watching over the equally diverse group of people who will see it every day. End quote. In 2016, the artists who were commissioned to do Face Wall put out a call inviting community members to pose for profile photographs to be used in the art piece. My father and I answered that call and had a nice father-daughter outing going to Chico State to have our profiles photographed. And here's why Face Wall is special to me. My father's profile was one of those chosen to be included in the piece. In the silhouette in the foreground of the photo on the left is him. Dad died a year after the Face Wall was unveiled, and it gives me comfort to know that I can visit him on the Face Wall. And I like to think of him looking out over Chico and its people in this community where he lived and worked and loved for nearly 60 years of his life.
Okay. All right, can you all see my screen all right? I'll take that as a yes. Thank you so much, Susan and Megan, for for going out and doing your homework that I asked you to do, which was to find public art in Chico and tell its story and why it's important to you. Now, if you have flown in or out of Boston or driven in Boston, you may have seen this large 150-foot gas tank. It's a natural gas tank, and it has a painting called Rainbow Swash. Just like the name sounds, it's like a giant paintbrush has swept over an industrial landmark with bright, bold colors of the rainbow. This was done in 1971, and it's the work of Sister Coretta Kent. Often overlooked and underappreciated amongst her contemporaries in pop and modern art, she occupies an unforgettable space in history at the unlikely intersection, I would say, of a Roman Catholic nun, pop art, and social justice. As part of her calling, she devoted herself to teaching and encouraging art and creating images of peace and positivity. It is said this natural gas tank is as iconic as to Boston as the Hollywood sign is to Los Angeles. And this same rainbow swash was put on one of the love stamps and became one of the most best-selling stamps of all times. Try to recall an advertisement or messaging that you've encountered recently. Was it peaceful, positive, inspiring? Maybe it included 3 to 5 minutes of deadly sounding side effects, which sounded quite terrible. Researchers estimate that we encounter at least 100 ads and messages per day that are meant to get our attention, to encourage us to think or act in a certain way. Now, if you Google it, they'll say that number is between 4,000 and 10,000 messages per day. But doesn't it benefit Google to have more competition in the ad market? When researchers have actually done and verified, they're saying closer to 100. But still, that's a lot of information. And just like food, we digest information, we consume it, we process it, and sometimes consciously, sometimes without even realizing it, we are influenced by its messages. In many spiritual homes, stained glass windows are part of what tells the story of that space. They are, in some ways, the equivalent of modern-day billboards or advertisements and community art murals all in one. Here's an example from the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque in Iran. Many mosques use bright colors and geometric patterns in their windows, and the ones that I visited, as you can kind of see here in the reflection, it's like the light comes in through the windows and it streams and it actually becomes a part of the interior, the way that light becomes part of the inside. Here's another example from the Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. Stained glass can be traced back to the 1st century of the Common Era, or also what's called AD, and it was widespread, especially in European cathedrals by the 12th century. In medieval times, when most of the population was illiterate, the stained glass in cathedrals shared messages, stories for people to read. And they would read this again and again each time they came into the space. This example in Paris includes floor-to-ceiling windows, all with biblical stories. We know that one of the ways to get through hard times is to tell stories of resilience and liberation. And these are often the stories that are taken from the Bible and portrayed in stained glass. Depictions of survival, resilience, promise, salvation. Again, consciously or subconsciously, which would be consumed with each visit. This is what we consider to be art that is socially transformative because it can give hope. It can orient us when we become disoriented. It can calm. It can remind us of something more. And every church, every religious institution in every community and every denomination affirmed certain symbols that were preserved to move people to think and act accordingly to their messages. I asked my friend Max Brumberg Kraus to tell me a little bit about art and the history of art in cathedrals as he understood it. He's isn't this just so you? He is a Jewish artist who's informed by Catholic theology of art, who is sharing this following statement for a UU congregation. I think there's something beautiful and timeless about weaving biblical motifs and stories with both grand church history, say of the denomination, and of the specific church's history. It reminds me of how the Catholic St. Louis Cathedral Basilica incorporates stories of the founding of St. Louis, the builders of the cathedral, and biblical motifs from Genesis and Revelations, amongst others, in its ceiling mosaic. It can help us think about how myth, scripture, and the past shape our present, how our present and near history are also sacred stories, and how reality comprises the symbolic. We are always surrounded by things that are beautiful in themselves and also more than themselves, a portal into another past, another meaning, another reality, a possibility. And again, those are the words of Max Brumberg Krause. And here's a close-up of one of those examples that he was talking about. This is Mother Elizabeth Ann Seton, who has lived from 1774 to 1821. And she was an American Catholic saint, educator, and founder of the first American congregation of religious sisters, the Sisters of Charity. And she is one of those whose stories is told on the ceiling mosaic at the Cathedral Basilica of St. Louis in the South Dome. Now, I want to talk a little bit about signs and symbols and this overall picture of the sacred art that we find in many buildings. Now, many would claim that you cannot have worship without the arts, without song, without poems, without the intentional aesthetics, and without the living altars that bring life to the message and themes. And let me just give a quick shout out to Chris Persky. Thank you so much today for your music, Chris. If there was ever a better time to say my statement that I just said, it's when you're moved by music like what you shared today. Now, one reason for this, why you can't have worship without the arts, is because by its nature, art engages symbols. The importance of symbols, made especially popular by the theologian Paul Tillich, and there's probably some folks out there that have read Paul Tillich, is that symbols participate in the reality that they represent and open up new levels of understanding. And Tillich differentiated between symbols and signs. So on one side we have a flag, and any flag is often a symbol. This one happens to be the pride flag. And the other thing on this screen is a stop sign. A sign is just what it is, right? It's a sign that says stop. But if you look at the pride flag and the symbolism, you can think about what that might symbolize to you and what some of the things that you might associate when you see that hanging in someone's door, hanging on someone's church. What's interesting is I learned just this last summer that the pride flag that was made in the 1970s, each color symbolizes something important to the community that created it. And that includes the red being for life, the orange for healing, the yellow for sunlight, green for nature, blue for serenity or peace, and purple for spirit. On the left of this flag, there are sometimes these other colors, the black, brown, the light blue, the pink, and the white. And this is signifies queer people of color and trans people, showing and affirming that their existence is also part of the liberation and symbol of this flag. A symbol gains its power. A symbol gains its power and validity by expressing the connection between the human existential questions, right? The big questions like who are we and why are we here? What is liberation? What is life? Paul Tillich says any description can become idolatrous when it's mistaken for the reality that it points to. So for Tillich, God, or what he called the ultimate concern, always had to be symbolic. It was always pointing to what it was, never actually the thing, because it was beyond any word, any description. Now, in Buddhism, this same concept is often explained through the finger pointing at the moon example. And this is, if you think of the moon as enlightenment, the finger is pointing towards the moon, and the finger shouldn't be mistaken for what it's pointing at. And that's part of the teaching, right? Don't mistake the finger for the moon. So art in sacred spaces, what does it do, right? It often raises religious questions, and these are those existential questions. What is ultimate? What is good? It reveals the character of the faith tradition. So what do the people that gather there, what are some of their beliefs and practices that unite them? It can be prophetic, right? The watchman looking out for the sacred in the world and bringing notice to that. It can be as a sacramental, revealing the divine nature. And finally, it can help us imagine a different world, or perhaps sustain us in the current world that we're in. Back to Sister Coretta Kent. One of the characteristics of religion today, or the spiritual life, which is perhaps always been true for UU, is that the sacred art is no longer confined to worship buildings, right? No longer confined to cathedral. The mixing of the sacred and the profane, and perhaps the lack of distinction between the two, is one of the most profound aspects of religious movements of our days. Prior to the mid-19th century and the Darwinian Revolution, the words creative and creativity were not used at all, and creation was only associated with the divine. Since the 1950s, these words have increased in use, and creative power is now used with human beings and with nature as well. Sister Coretta Kent, whom I mentioned with the natural gas tank, often took everyday objects and added religious language and symbols to try to reach people, to move people in our modern era. One of my favorite pieces is this one that's up now. It looks similar to the Del Monte tomato advertising of her time, but inscribed in the Ato, the bottom part of the text, is this really small text that says things like, Mary, Mother, is the juiciest tomato of them all. And the text goes on in poetic prose about the yearning for the perfect circle that is Mother Mary, as if she were something to be eaten, something to be tasted, something bursting with life and juice and seeds and want. Ooh, Sister Coretta. Ooh, I'm blushing. I mean, the language that she uses is stirring and visceral, like eating a fresh tomato out of the garden in September. I desire the message it shares. So symbols can be long held or made new, such as what she did here. Now, the city of brotherly love in Philadelphia, they are known as the mural capital of the world. And this came about because of social unrest and inequality. It came about because of how many of the areas in their downtown cities were just getting trashed and were just bleak. It is said that when there is art and beauty, when you have I think Susan maybe mentioned that you have these beautiful receptacles for your newspapers. When you have that in the public square, crime goes down, vandalism goes down, beauty changes spaces. And the city of Philadelphia began to realize that their walls were just begging for different messages than, negativity is here. So they began this program, and now over 4,000 murals are around the city. And it's collaborations between artists and community programs, and especially marginalized populations. This one that you see on the screen is called Finding Home, and it brought together community members who have experienced homelessness with Project Home, an organization that provides a variety of essentials similar to what it sounds like Chat and other organizations in Chico do, resources to help people in transition, including housing, employment, education, and healthcare. It raises the awareness and breaks down the stigma of homelessness. Art workshops provided unsheltered community members the opportunity to learn simple weaving techniques to create scarves and other woven products as practice for creating the textile mural. And this is one of the first large-scale textile murals that was installed, whose goal was to engage through dialogue and art, collaboration with those who are fortunate to have shelter and those who are not. This is a close-up of the mosaic, and you can see that there's actual pictures such as this one. And these photos and different textiles are woven into the mural. And on the side of the building is this where it says one. Here's another example of a mural in Philadelphia, and this one is called Sanctuary. And it made me think about how last month we talked about sanctuary, being sanctuary for one another, and that Irish proverb, in the shelter of one another, the people live. I'm going to stop my slideshow at this time. And just encourage you at this time to look around your walls at home or the walls of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Chico. Almost like stained glass, catching light and reflecting beauty, the photographs on UUFC's walls are done very similar in a way to what stained glass does, shares stories of beauty. These photographs are from Lloyd, who is a deceased member of the fellowship. Lloyd was a photographer and worked in advertising, starting in fashion, moving to furniture, and he said he preferred furniture because the models didn't complain as much. He was out walking his dog one day and saw a calla lily that enchanted him. And so he went and returned each day on his walk and waited for the flower to open just right and the light to be just right. And when it did, he snapped the photo and he entered it into the Marin County Fair and won Best in Show. And this began his fine artwork in flower photography. Now, Lloyd was also a gardener. He mainly took photos of flowers that he grew himself. So most of the photos, except for perhaps one on the walls, are from his gardens. So you think about it, you have an avid gardener who is also a photographer, who worked in advertising, who made this shift to primarily photographing flowers, essentially to advertise beauty, love, life, the sacred. Think about when you bring flowers when do you bring them? Where do you bring them? You most often see them at a celebration of life. You see them at a celebration of love. We even have a service each year dedicated to flowers called the Flower Service, which recognizes that flowers in a bouquet can symbolize the diversity of a community that gathers and the beauty of the unity that creates, and how the diversity is actually part of the beauty. And that represents how a diverse group of individuals can come together for a common goal or shared values. And if you have questions about the photos around this sanctuary, you could talk to Angela Risden, and do so gently because Lloyd was her partner. Minneapolis-based artist and social activist Ricardo Levins Morales compares art to the herbs of a healer. The herbs may raise or break a fever. They may lower it. If you need some art inspiration right now around Chico is the Open Studios Art Tour this weekend and next weekend. If you go to the Amtrak station where the Artist Collaborative is, you can purchase one of these booklets that will give you a map, and you can go literally to the different homes and studios of artists in your community and see what they are creating and where they create it. In these times when it feels like the interconnected web is holding a lot of pain, let us remember the power of art in the public square to share messages of a different world. There are walls on the inside and outside of our homes, our community centers. There are fences, there are windows, there are sidewalks. If these walls could talk, what do they need to say today? How can we use the power of art to be part of the world of social transformation, positive, inspiring, to raise or break a fever? Thank you so much. May it be so, and amen.